Welcome to our first presentation on blood sugar regulation, also known as blood sugar handling. Blood sugar dysregulation refers to either chronically elevated or depressed serum blood sugar in the form of glucose, or alternating periods of both high and low blood sugar. Before we get into the statistics on the chronic diseases related to blood sugar handling issues, I wanted to describe the importance of maintaining a balanced blood sugar level. Firstly, blood sugar control is helpful for maintaining a healthy weight. The hormonal fluctuations inherent in blood sugar dysregulation are associated with weight gain. For example, hyperglycemic episodes, such as the consumption of several donuts or a Coke, triggers the body to release insulin in order to drive glucose uptake into our cells. The overload of glucose in our bloodstream leaves the body with three options: to use that glucose for fuel via glycolysis, to convert that glucose into glycogen in the liver, or to convert that glucose into fatty acids. When we have met our mitochondrial energy demands and the body senses we have enough glycogen in our skeletal muscle and tissue, the only option left is to store excess glucose, now in the form of triglycerides and glycerols, in adipose tissue. As a result, blood sugar dysregulation is known to be a predisposing factor for the development of cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. Secondly, blood sugar control is helpful for maintaining stable energy levels. Blood sugar handling issues can contribute to feeling fatigued or sleepy after a meal, and likewise feeling hangry, shaky, or lightheaded before a meal. Maintaining a stable blood sugar level promotes balanced energy throughout the day. Thirdly, blood sugar imbalance can lead to a host of musculoskeletal issues, such as sore joints, backaches, headaches, and can contribute to inflammatory conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis. Let's start with diabetes. 34.2 million people in the United States are suffering from diabetes. Every 10 seconds, someone in the US dies from diabetic-related causes. In 2000, the global estimate of adults living with diabetes was 151 million. By 2009, it had grown 88% to 285 million. Today, 9.3% of adults aged 20 to 79 years old, a staggering 463 million people, are living with diabetes. If the current rates continue, 1 in 3 US adults will have diabetes by 2050. The aforementioned statistics from the US do not include the prevalence of prediabetes, defined as impaired glucose tolerance, high fasting glucose values, or a higher than normal hemoglobin A1C level, although these values are typically not seen at the level that they would be in type 2 diabetes, for example. It is important to note that fasting glucose levels are the least sensitive marker for the future development of diabetes and heart disease. This is primarily because fasting glucose varies a lot from day to day and can be affected by recent food intake, high intra-individual variability, acute stress, poor sleep, and diurnal variations. Furthermore, hemoglobin A1C is a better marker for blood sugar regulation in that it measures the amount of sugar that is stuck to red blood cells. Considering that red blood cells live an average of 3 months, this gives us a much better average measure of blood sugar over a 3-month period and can give us greater focus within the most recent 6 weeks of measurement. Diabetes takes on several forms, primarily type 1 and type 2 diabetes, although current research now indicates the prevalence of type 1.5 diabetes in patient populations. Type 1 diabetes, also known as juvenile diabetes or insulin-dependent diabetes, primarily refers to an autoimmune condition in which the body's own immune system attacks and destroys the insulin-producing beta cells of the pancreas. Now, you may know somebody struggling with type 1 diabetes because the telltale sign is that they will wear an insulin pump. An insulin pump is a small computerized device, and it delivers insulin through a thin tube that goes under your skin. The way this device works is it regulates insulin in the way your body naturally would, which is by secreting a steady flow throughout the day and night. Now, those who are struggling with type 1 diabetes have obviously a very difficult time producing adequate amounts of insulin, so insulin pumps can go a long way to assist one in mitigating the damaging effects of type 1 diabetes. Now, that being said, type 1 diabetes for the past 20 years has been thought to require lifelong insulin dependence. New research suggests that implementation of the fasting mimicking diet, FMD, which is a very low calorie, low protein, and high fat diet, has been shown to restore insulin-dependent glucose control, improve cytokine profiles, which are inflammatory markers, and trigger the regeneration of pancreatic beta cells. Now, the remarkable nature of these findings are particularly important in light of the fact that pancreatic beta cells replicate at an extremely low rate. If you're interested in learning more about this, I highly recommend Chris Kresser's article, Could Type 1 Diabetes Be Reversible After All? And the study that he cites from Cell magazine that goes into further detail with the findings. Type 1.5 diabetes, like type 1, is autoimmune in nature but develops later in adolescence and early adulthood. We refer to type 1.5 diabetes as latent onset of diabetes in adults, or LADA. Symptoms of type 1.5 diabetes typically include the metabolic syndrome indicators implicit in type 2 diabetes, such as weight gain, chronic fatigue, retention of adipose tissue around the midsection, etc. Diabetes mellitus refers to the progression of blood sugar dysregulation caused primarily by poor lifestyle habits such as physical inactivity, the standard American diet, environmental toxins, chronic stress, and more. It is primarily characterized by our cells' loss of sensitivity, aka resistance, to insulin, as well as pancreatic B-cell insufficiency. The dysfunction of glucose metabolism in type 2 diabetes can lead to hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, as mentioned before, and hyperglycemia. Although each of these is slightly different than the other, they certainly aren't strangers to one another. Hyperglycemia is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, nerve damage, kidney damage, diabetic retinopathy, bone and joint problems, skin problems, and periodontal infections. Insulin resistance leads to insatiable appetite, inflammation and oxidative stress, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, low HDL, high triglycerides, and weight gain. Hyperinsulinemia is also associated with weight gain, with sugar cravings, intense hunger, anxiety, cognitive dysfunction, and more. Metabolic syndrome, on the other hand, is a cluster of biological factors characterized by abdominal obesity, dyslipidemia, hypertension, and type 2 diabetes mellitus. It is important to note that syndrome is a label that we give to a collection of signs and symptoms, but often denotes the inability of conventional medicine to identify the root cause. In functional medicine, we seek to rectify physiological imbalance from within. By using the definition of metabolic syndrome from the International Diabetes Federation and the National Cholesterol Education Program, the prevalence of metabolic syndrome is estimated at more than 30% in the United States. However, by using the Adult Treatment Panel criteria, prevalence is estimated at about 22%. The link between metabolic syndrome and increased risk of multiple chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, arthritis, chronic kidney disease, schizophrenia, and several types of cancer and of early death have been reported for many decades. As Mark Hyman states in his Diabesity Solution ebook, all of the previously described conditions refer to one problem with varying degrees of severity. He has coined the term diabesity to refer to the cluster of symptoms associated with diabetes and metabolic syndrome. As you can see, we are up against an unforgiving foe. With that said, I want to reaffirm the potential for each and every one of us to mitigate the factors that contribute to diabesity with powerful lifestyle and behavioral changes. I am an example of this powerful transformation. Having grown up as a morbidly obese child, I can testify to the devastating effects of poor diet, sleep deprivation, emotional dysfunction, codependency, and trauma as contributing factors to obesity. The very essence of this program is an expression of those lessons that I have learned through years of dietary intervention, stress management, meditative practice, physical activity, compassionate action, and relentless self-love. Having grown up as a morbidly obese child, I can testify to the devastating effects of poor diet, sleep deprivation, emotional dysfunction, codependency, and trauma as contributing factors to obesity. The very essence of this program is an expression of the lessons I have learned through years of dietary intervention, stress management, meditative practice, physical activity, compassionate action, and relentless self-love. My most sincere desire is to embody the principles of holistic well-being, thereby acting as a beacon for those struggling to find their way home to physical, mental, and emotional freedom.